How's it going, friends, and welcome to the channel. So in this video we are going to be looking at Hasegowa's Machine Krieger Bomber Cat. We're also going to be looking at hiding the battery, doing some electrics, and super gluing some chains. So grab yourself a brew and a bicky and let's get into this build. Right, so I'm going to start off with apologising because there's going to be lots of bits of footage I've missed because I was doing this while I was doing the King Tiger. So there's lots of bits I didn't realise I forgot to film, so I'll apologise for that. Now, so you can see I'm starting off obviously with the cockpit section. You do have an option to put a figure. It does come with a figure for it. I didn't want to use him, wasn't very pleased with the figure itself, to be honest. So I've added some seat belts to sort of fill in the gap because it just looked weird that there weren't any there. So I've just used literally a couple of layers of masking tape, some thin ones in the middle, and then a bit thick layer over the top just to give it a bit of, I don't know, sort of texture and pattern. I've used some old photo etch bits for the buckles. I can't remember what the other ones were for, but the one in the centre, in sort of the knacker strap, is a Spitfire hubcap piece there. So yeah, just use a few extra spares that I've got kicking around. Chipping again just to make it look a bit tired, battered and worn, with the sponge chipping technique, which I do very enjoy doing. It's great on these sort of ones because we can make larger chips and emphasize them a little bit more, makes it a little bit more manageable to play around with as well. Maybe it's too sort of like refined. And as always, coming in with the brush, as I like to do, to add a few scratches, emphasize some of the chipping just to make them a little bit bigger, you know, making larger worn areas. And again, like most things, just sort of hitting the areas that I feel like are going to be sort of knocked and chipped around. I will later on, there's like the headrest. There's a couple of sort of like arm pads. They'll be painted in sort of leathery colour, and basically done a very similar sort of things to this. Mostly I think I used a paintbrush to do the chipping on those areas. Well, it's not really chipping, it's just to make it look like worn leather. So at the back we've got these vents. Now they give you a solid plastic piece to blank these off. Now I wasn't really happy with that. I didn't want to do that. Plus the fact I'm going to light it up as well. So we want these open. Now I used these grill pots that I had kicking around. I just ordered them, a few different sizes. Wasn't happy with the ones that I got, so raided the spares box. Always keep photo etch because you never know when you're going to want to use it. And found these grills that I had, I think from my Jag Tiger build. So I've used the original sort of blanking part just to give us a shape, so I can cut it down a little bit because there's not much need for all that. So I'll just cut it down to the rough shape and then just basically sort of forced it into the gap, make it sort of shape to the vent, and super glued it in. So I needed the light to go through two vents and kind of like a sort of exhaust kind of thing, and rather than getting loads of LEDs, I decided to use a clear bit of plastic, scuff the back up so it would refract the light around, so I would only have to use one LED. The LEDs I've used for this one are pretty much very standard ones. They've already got the diodes or resistors already put in there, so I'm going to try and figure out the right resistors for it. Now originally I wanted to try and hide the power source within inside the model. Unfortunately that was going to happen because I needed a 9-volt battery for the LEDs. Fortunately for me, there was a panel on the one side of the craft that I could have the option of the type of panel that went on it, which meant I could actually leave the panel off. So what I did was sort of made this internal gubbins sort of panel to go in. Now for most of it is just spare parts, most of them you may recognise, but the wires themselves I've just used sort of bits of bobs that I've got, so like bits of copper wire and lead wire as well. So for sort of like braided wire, all I've done is had a core piece of wire and used lead wire and sort of wrapped it round, so it gives that sort of nice, you know, them sort of corrugated type bits of wire or ribbed wire or cabling or whatever you want to call it. Just again, just to make it a bit more interesting. Drilled a couple of holes for where I wanted them to sit, glued them in. Once the glue had gone off, I was able to manoeuvre these cables around that area. Most of which using lead wire, because the lead wire is a lot easier to manipulate, as you've just seen. and eggs are a lot easier just to cut off because it doesn't really take that much effort because it is very, very soft. But again, in that case, also it makes it very easy to manipulate around the engine or thing, whatever it is. I suppose part of the engine. I don't know what it is. It's a thing. So as you can see, the unit dry fitted in. The 2 green wires will eventually actually be the power leads going into the model to power the lights. It also help sort of sell the notion that obviously, because this is going to be a vehicle that's been having its sort of engines or systems test, and with those going in, it kind of like, you know, helps lead to whole selling the thing as well as hiding the power source. Right, so I thought I'd do this live rather than trying to do the edit later on, because it's just going to be easier for me, because I'll lose track very, very easily and run out of time to say anything in the section of film. So basically the lighting that I've done for this, so I'm using pre-wired lights, slightly larger these than what I've used before, particularly the size of things is going to be better. They have a resistor already soldered in to it, so that's took a lot of stress out, well, hassle, because I struggle to figure out the right resistors for the bulbs. Also because I've got one flashing one, I still have no idea what type of resistor I need to use for that, whether it's the same for the colour or there has to be a very specific one. I don't know, so just getting these pre-wired ones, it's going to be a lot easier. If you're interested in these sort of ones, I'll leave them in the link in the description down below so you can find these. You can buy them as singles or groups or whatever. So yeah, so bottom half, upper half, there's more wires in the top half than there is the bottom at the moment. So what we've got here, so this is the top, we've got navigate. I've put some navigation lights in here. That one's a bit of a mess. I bodged that up trying to thin the plastic down so I could fit the bulb in and get as close to the surface as possible. Got too excited with that, so I've melted it a little bit. But I may use some clear sprue as some lenses. I've made some up already. I think I did them for something else, but I may use them in here as well. So I've stuck them in using green stuff because I just thought that was going to be the best way of doing it, really. It seems to have worked so far. We've got 2 coloured lights on the inside, so these are red and green, or maybe the other way around. So these are for the power source of the craft. So because it's like a mag-grav type sort of thing, I thought you'd use a different power source. So I've used the blue, just I don't know why, just because both top and bottom have the sort of vents, which I've put a mesh in, should have probably seen earlier on. Again, just to be a bit more interesting in the case of that. So to get the power from here to the source, or vice versa even, when I've done this bit, which I think I may have explained, I've not even got around to the edit yet, so I don't know what I'm going to have said. With making this panel here, was make it accessible. I can run 2 wires from here out to sort of like a ground unit, so it makes sense of them being there. I did want to try and keep the power source and the switch inside. It's not going to work because I need a 9-volt battery. Realistically, I can use 2 AA's, which I've got like this, which I've been using to test. That's okay, not powerful enough, so it's going to be a proper 9-volt. Sorry, it is 9-volt. Yeah, 9-volt battery in the base instead. So to make things a little bit easier, so they're all going to come to this point here as they exit the model. Because the wires for these lights are kind of quite rigid, so because I always use a lot of, I've got like some boatload of 6-core cable, so I'll just strip that out and I'll just get the wires out. These are a lot more flexible, so I've attached them here. I've put a heat shrink between the 2 power and neutral, because I made a mess of that before and I forgot to put that in when trying to test the lights. They didn't work because of course they were shorting out. I'm like an idiot because I forgot about that. So I've shrunk wrap them, and for some reason I put another one around the outside, just trying to make things tidier. So like I said, this one's a lot more flexible, so it runs around the back of the cab up to here, and then when we attach the top to the bottom. This took me a while to think this out because left and right doesn't work very well for me for some reason. So when this side attached, obviously going to be on this side. So I've done the same here. I've managed to bend these round, all connected to this side. So eventually I will solder these to those, and then the two exiting wires from the group out of the side of the compartment there. Like I said, I've got two blue ones in here. I've also got a blinker, one down the bottom there. Just again, a bit more added interest really. I've used some sticky foil stuff. I got this for when I was insulating the garage. So sticky back, and I've used that to try and move the light around a little bit, because the problem with LEDs, they're sort of very omnidirectional. So there's not much of a spread. Problem is, it doesn't really like sticking to itself, so I've put some super glue. And forget the super glue is going to fog, so I'm going to have to try and put some more in, and maybe use some white glue or something else to stick it down, because you can see it's made a bit of a mess in there. I don't think that's really going to do what I want it to do. To help move the light around, I've used clear acrylic, not acrylic, I forgot what it's called, it'll come to me later, clear card, scuffed it up with a sanding stick. I'm losing words now, this is why I don't do stuff live anymore. So what this will do is dissipate the light, refract it, sorry, a little bit better, and spread it around. And I've used two large shrink wraps, which I've had to put around a brush, heated them up to give them the shape, so we get these sort of like these sort of intakes, and it separates, you know, that compartment with everything else. So that's the idea with that. So what I'll try and do, we know this is not going to work very well because you're going to try and do this live and these things don't work very well. Okay, so this is going to be a bit janky as it always is, but again, this is just to give you a bit of an idea. Get this to focus in the right, there we go. Just knock that light off a little bit, so you can see the light, and you can sort of see it around here, how it's been moved around. So that's, you know, that's kind of the idea of what I wanted to do for that, just to, I don't know, just a bit of interest anyway, something a little bit different. And as I say, we've got a little white blinking navigator light there. So yeah, so that's how the wiring's going at the moment. You can see it there a little up on the inside. So we'll try to keep stuff as separate as possible, so we don't get any light bleeds from anywhere else. And you can just about see the little blinker down there, but that shouldn't make any difference to everything else that's going on inside. I've put a bit of blank tape around the back of here, because I'm quite worried about this sort of flooding into the cab area as well. That's why we've got this sort of shading going on here as well. To hope, we'll see, we'll do a dry fit maybe, or it might be a case of bodging it together. So we'll see how that goes later on. So spoilers, that blank didn't do nothing, but I didn't realise that until I started doing the finished photos. Never mind, it's not something you're going to see extremely well anyway. So the next thing was quite simply just to solder all the wires together, shrink wrap the naked ones, so again we don't have them touching and shorting out, because that's not going to be any good, especially after we glue it together and it all starts going wrong, and then we can't really do anything about it. So then I'll just put them all in for no reason whatsoever, and colossal waste of time. So there was a bit of a last minute addition to the lighting. There was a bit of a headlight on this sort of panel. I tried to kind of shave it out a little bit to thin it down, and also to get the light to fit in. That all went a little bit wrong, so I had to find something else to replace that light. And as you can see, I'm able to fit that LED in there nicely. There's also a nice little clear bit of acetate in there as well. We can see a quick test of it working there as well. Not that you need to, because it's a white light. Yeah, so as you can see, I've already put the model together. There's not really much going on. I've also added an extra weapon. It always comes with one, but I've had an extra one that was spare from a Games Workshop part. So I actually wanted the instrument panel to light up. This didn't really work, but when I tested it, it actually worked out really well. So I just want to show you anyway. So what I've done is I've drilled out all the dials, put a clear bit of acetate on the back, and then filled it with some UV resin. Once the resin had gone off, I'd used some spare decals because the original decals for the kit just disintegrated, which was annoying. But once I should have actually showed it actually working, but putting a ball behind that shows the dials and the screen, so it actually technically worked quite well, but didn't, because obviously it didn't all fit into place. Now move on to the engine. I've added a couple of bits of spare photo etch to the hand. There's not a lot, it's just sort of a little something to zhuzh it a little bit and kind of make it my own. The painting was a very simple, basic affair, black based, and I dry brushed some Vallejo oily steel over it. I couldn't quite figure out what I actually wanted to paint this in, and I just thought this was probably the best to sort of go with. So for the exhaust nozzle, I wasn't quite sure really where to go with this, so I thought I'd sort of do it rusty. You know, nothing really needs to be accurate on this because it's not really a real thing. So I've used some rust effects, the streaky rust from ammo, just completely plastered that all over, and then went in with some light rust from AK and wet blended it, and sort of just, you know, let it sort of mix in with itself. I did sort of go back in with the previous again and just let that dry. Once it was dry, I gave it a bit of a rub down with some universal weathering carrier, basically like white spirits, and sort of ended up with this. Again, wasn't sure where I was going with it, but this is the way it ended up, and I was quite pleased with it. As you can see, I also painted the wires, and then gave everything a bit of a wash with some artist oils using raw umber, a little bit of black, and again mixed in with the same universal weathering carrier to make it into a wash, and then just went around all the details. So most of this kit is actually made up of bits and bobs from other models. Most of it I think is a P38 Lightning, and a lot of Leaf suspension units. But again, I wanted to try and make this a little bit my own. It's nothing really groundbreaking, but I wanted to fill in these areas which would have originally been obviously for propellers. I don't know what they've tried to make it into, but obviously this is sort of like a jet intake, and I don't know, whatever was supposed to be inside there. But I didn't really like it, so I filled it with some green stuff, then some putty, and then sanded it down. It took quite a lot to get these flush. I still think in the end, actually, they're not quite as flush as I'd hoped and wanted to be in the end, but I feel it just looks better than having these sort of gaps in there. Now again, something I completely forgot to film was the sort of Gatling gun, as you can sort of see a bit there. I know this photo is mainly just the light working. Again, I just lost of what I was doing when I was building the Tiger, but I've replaced the gun barrels with some styrene tubing because they'll be hollow. It saved me trying to drill out. I thought they'd be a bit better. And again, you can see that gun from the Games Workshop kit, and I've also added a wire in there, as you can see, which again is using a bit of copper wire with some lead wire wrapped around it. So I had this idea in my head after I'd got this kit, is that I could have it sort of lashed down to a hanger floor and sort of like look to be working on. So fortunately there was these sort of bits, I don't know what they are to be honest with you, which is part of the kit. So I drilled them out, and what I'll be doing is, again, with some slightly thicker copper wire, is making some sort of eye hooks which will slot into there, and eventually there'll be some chains that run from the craft down to the hanger floor. We very quickly come on to painting. Now, like I said, there's a lot of this I haven't filmed because I just got so wrapped up in the Tiger build. When I did do bits of work on this, I sort of just forgot to do any filming for it. But generally the build for it is pretty straightforward. You've got to sort of check your fit a little bit to make sure it has gone together. I know, which I didn't feel I noticed until a lot later on, that actually the top two halves around the sort of the cockpit section, if you like, actually didn't seat properly at all. So that was a bit annoying. But generally, the fits and everything are quite good. Again, I haven't done very much drastic. I've tried to change it slightly. As you can see on the side there, I've used a fuel tank from a 109. Again, just making things a little bit different. I didn't like the kit part that went on there. The vents, I've added some mesh again from the same Jagdpanther kit. Again, just to make things a little bit kind of like my own build, not so much different. I know it's not exactly pushing the boat out, but just some, you know, that hopefully will be a little bit different from others. The paint scheme, I actually used one of the ones that was in the kit. I was struggling to try and figure something actually that was actually different. So I stuck with, you know, a straightforward pattern that they'd already got, which actually I did quite like. So I've used a Japanese Air Force green and khaki for the lighter brown underneath. Most of the decals are actually spares, which was basically all of the small ones and the danger ones. All those were all spares. The Devil, the F and the little bit of right in the back of the cockpit, and some of the more small white lettering parts were actually kit ones. For some reason those ones didn't disintegrate like the dial ones. I'm not quite sure why that was, but I didn't really kind of want to risk using some of the ones that were in it just in case that happened. So for the weathering, very simple again, mostly chipping, sponge chipping. I used the original base coat colour, added a little bit of deck tan in there just to lighten it up a little bit. And to go through straight through the paint to the metalwork, I've used a sort of a light white grey, as sort of like a muted aluminium sort of colour. I didn't really want to use the actual metallic one because I thought it just, I don't know, I wanted a muted sort of colour, so I thought that was the best way of doing that. What I did do before this was do a panel wash, which was using artist oils again, using raw umber, and again a smidge of black in there as well. Keeping this as a heavily weathered craft, I wanted to show a bit of like sort of dirt going along around the sort of what I'd class as a sort of an entrance area to the vehicle, and I just used burnt umber for this, and as you can see, very heavily thinned out. I did potentially probably about 2 coats of this just to sort of get a decent opacity. For the base, I was given this sort of baseboard, display board to use. Now I've actually done the wrong thing of making this fit the model rather than the other way around. So as you can see, I've cut some plastic tiles, used obviously plastic card to make the floor. Made sure they're a bit of an angle just to make them a little bit interesting rather than being all straight and level. Again, thought I'd use oils to sort of spread the paint around because it's quite a large area. Stippled it to give it a bit of texture. Wasn't happy with that, so I went with this. That really did not work out in the slightest, nor did that. So I ended up on this. I ended up actually happened to airbrush it in the end, so I did do a bit of pre-shading there. So I made this sort of grey brown sort of colour. And again, to make the floor itself interesting, I've masked out this sort of kind of hard standing kind of thing. So down the centre is going to be kind of like, you know, it's sort of line up in, so it will line up with the anchor points and a kind of like danger blast area in the back. I also use the base colour to sort of chip the paint a little bit, giving it a bit more worn. And using, again, artist oils to make grease stains. This was using the sort of a brown, green and a yellow, and some Abteilung fresh engine oil. The anchor points of the floor are just some plastic discs that are cut out, a little hole in the middle obviously for the ground anchors, and using some Abteilung rust to tighten those up a little bit, and a little bit of pigment to show some sort of scorching on the ground. So to hide the battery itself, I've made this little sort of ground accumulator unit, basically measured to the size, or just over the size of the 9-volt battery. And again, raiding my spares box for bits. So we've got some bits from the Jagdpanther. The instruments on there are the ones from, or some leftovers from the Sea King. And the wheels are actually from the Lancaster nose arc kit, which is for the stand that it sits on. So I thought they were quite useful, and obviously some little brass bits on there as well. And there you can see the battery nicely tucked away in there. I did magnetise it, wasn't really needed, but I did it anyway. And I also added a switch in there as well. So the chains were a bit of a blind buy off the internet. I wasn't quite sure what would be the right sort of size. Unfortunately, these were. As you see, I've super glued them up together because I want them to be all tight and taut. So I want them to, like, you know, make sure they look like they were under tension. These shackles were the same. These are 1/35 ones. I also bought some 1/10 ones, but obviously they fit in the chains and the tie downs that I'd made, and actually I think they just look quite good. I'd added some masking tape to the chains as kind of like a indicator that they're there. I mean, not that you'd miss them, but it was just sort of trying to, you know, just trying to make a little bit more of some form of interest to them. So just some masking tape, and obviously I just painted them red, and nothing really special about them. Now the kit does come with a second figure, standing figure, and it wasn't a really good one. The fit was really bad, and I just wasn't really happy with it. So I've seen another figure online, but it was this figure. But I was a bit annoyed when it turned up, because actually the device that's in the hand I've actually had to make myself, because I thought that's what it come with, as you can see here. And that's, as I said, not how it turned up. It was actually a clipboard. So I had to make it myself, again using some spares, and actually used a trap pin for the emergency stop button. So yeah, I haven't done a video on the painting because, again, I'm not confident with painting figures. That is actually quite a good one, but maybe I will do one showing how I do my figures. An attempt to busy up the scene a little bit more, because there was a bit of a gap on one side because the position of this didn't work out the way I intended it to. So I made this tool table, all out of plasticard. The tools themselves, I did them on my laser cutter, and yeah, they turned out. I thought I'd just use some oversized tools really, because I thought it'd kind of go with the scene. And the dirty rags were just made out of some tissue paper dipped in some watered down PVA glue. So all the wires were snaked around and super glued down. The one that comes from a controller, again, is a lead wire, because again, it's nice and malleable, can get into some really nice shapes and tight corners if we need to. So for the idea for this was basically, it was kind of like a systems check. Obviously everything else goes to the power of the craft, and she's doing a little systems check there. So I made a little hole in the instrument panel and snaked that wire in to again give that impression that she's checking some systems. And the last thing to add was the support prop, which I made out of tubular styrene. I thought it would be nice to sort of add that little detail as you know, your secondary safety measure, so the thing don't land on your head. So, as always, it's that time of the video where I nearly show you the video. But beforehand, again, I want to apologise for probably one of the worst videos I've probably done. I'm hoping the finished build and the glamour shots at the end are going to hopefully make up for that. Again, I really do apologise. I was working on the King Tiger. No, I wasn't. Yeah, King Tiger, that's what I was doing. I was doing the King Tiger. Because I wanted to get that out before it released. And yeah, I kind of forgot to do a lot of things. Basically filming most of this build. I didn't take many photos of the build either. You've seen through the video, so again, I do really apologise for that. I'd actually thought I'd done a lot more than I actually had. So I hope it hasn't been too bad of a video. I hope you've picked up a few bits and bobs within it, but again, I do really apologise. It's not the best, but again, I hope the finished build at the end will make up for that. So please, you know, bear with us for a little second. That being said, I want to say a massive thank you for watching and getting to this far in the video. I also want to say a massive thank you to channel members Psyche Mac, Darren Hall and John Alex Scale Modelling for being members. If you'd like to help the channel further, there are links in the description down below for channel members. I think there's still PayPal down there, and buy me a coffee. If not, just liking, subscribing to the channel, hitting bell for notifications to let you know when the next video is available, sharing, comments, all that good stuff as we'd like you to do as YouTubers. So anyway, that's enough for me babbling. I hope you enjoyed the video. End video, the finished photos. I'll catch you again soon.